January 27th, year 3048, Halzen Homestead. OX-15 and PX-16, the Halzen's newest robot additions, were running around frantically as they vacuumed and swept every last inch of their large house, signaling to Shear that the next large gathering of the town of Ejapol was happening at her family's house once more, even though she could have sworn it was supposed to be done at the Michaels' home that week. Oh well, it wasn't like she was actually going to stick around. There wasn't much to do at said gatherings, not with the lack of human interaction. Shear carefully walked past her mother, who sat on her chair in the middle of the living room. Mother Halzen had her eyes glued to one wall in particular. She stared at the wall that displayed the current week's newest robot models, the QX-17 and the QX-17AA, and Shear could see the green lights flashing at the base of her mother's skull, meaning she was already sending an injection to the company to place her order. Voice usage had become practically obsolete after Modron Pox, a famous scientist from 2063, invented the mind ejector. The mind ejector was a small chip planted at the base of the skull that allowed each person who owned one to be able to transfer thoughts directly to one another, removing any sort of need for speech. It took years for people to catch on to such a wild invention, but after the year 3000, the government decided to make it a requirement for all people to own one. For the last few years, 17-year-old Shear had wanted nothing more than to dive into the history of the world before the Pox invention had come along. She discovered the concept of language entirely by accident, a concept that she found more fascinating than anything she had ever thought of before. Since she had had the chip since her life began, she didn't realize that there were more functions for the mouth than just eating food. At the current moment, Shear had left her house to go and explore the city. People hardly left their homes without some computerized machine getting them places. Shear enjoyed being outside more than most of her peers, and enjoyed looking at all of the silver, colorless scenery. The metal branches clanked and screeched in the artificial wind, producing as much man-made oxygen as was possible. In all honesty, she was shocked they hadn't invented a way for humans to forfeit breathing altogether. She made her way through the empty town square, an area that once held crowds of people, and reached the wall that encircled the town. She knew of the door that led to the outside area of the town, but had been sent many thoughts from her parents to stay away, as the world outside the wall was considered dangerous. After pondering for a moment, she opened the door carefully, making sure no one saw her, and she stepped into a place filled with a kaleidoscope of colors that she had never seen before, even through injections. Shear stepped gingerly through a soft, colorful plant that sprouted from the ground. It covered every inch of the land she was on and recognized it as grass, an organism that had been ignored since the town of Ejapol had been built. She had heard legends of such a thing existing through thorough research on shady websites, but she hadn't realized that it was a real thing that existed just outside of the wall. She listened as a gust of wind, real wind, much unlike the fan-made wind in Ejapol, zipped through the air, harmonizing with the swaying of the real trees she saw with her own eyes. "You seem lost, young one." Shear jumped back, her eyes wide as she looked to see a large creature with sharp filaments sprouting from its head. She stood there, frozen, not knowing what to do. "I take it you're from the dome, are you not?" Shear still had not moved as she tried to piece together the noises the creature was making. It was speaking a language that she remembered learning about. She watched as the creature nodded its head towards the giant dome that stood over her town, realizing that it had understood that she didn't know how to speak. Shear nodded in reply. The creature put its attention back on her, motioning for her to follow through an area filled with real, non-metal trees. She ran behind it, taking in the colors and scents of this new area. She couldn't believe how nice it was to inhale natural oxygen as opposed to the man-made oxygen. The creature stopped by a small stream of water, stepping cautiously into it. Shear watched his head bob down to the surface, and Shear stepped into the stream. The sun reflected off the surface in a way Shear had never seen before. She basked in its beauty as she stared down at it, listening to the gentle hum of the water as it raced down the rocks. She listened carefully to a loud, sweet tune being chirped by a flying animal. It was in time with the water, the wind, the grass, and the trees, comforting her like a mother would her child. After taking in the scenery, the creature in front of her led her into a small clearing where the two sat. The antlered creature picked berries from a nearby bush and placed them by Shear's feet, and the two sat in a comfortable silence as the sun said its goodbyes before being replaced by the moon. Gir and her newfound friend listened to the symphony of howls that echoed through the tree-dense area, and Gir decided to echo such sounds. The sound that escaped her throat was small and not pleasant to the ear, but she watched as the creature smiled gently before joining her in the melody of the forest.